Talk about national security. The clock is ticking toward that deadline at 6 p.m. Eastern. That is when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals will hold oral arguments over the president's travel ban. I want to bring in NBC's justice correspondent Pete Williams. Pete, what are we expecting here?
Well, the Trump executive order on immigration will remain on hold for at least another day. After getting the last of the written filings in court on Monday night, this three-judge panel of the appeals court that hears these emergency applications decided it wanted to hear an hour of oral argument. This will be done by telephone later today. The judges will all be in their chambers. The lawyers will be in their offices. They won't actually come to the courthouse. This will last an hour, and then once that's over, at some point the court will rule relatively quickly. Depends on whether any of them want to write dissents or how much detail they want to put in their order. Maybe an order could come tonight, maybe tomorrow. And interestingly, in its court filings on Monday night, the Trump administration for the first time raised a possible fallback. It said if the appeals court is inclined to rule against the government and for the states to keep this hold on the Trump order, then the most it should do is let the executive order go back into effect, but give an exemption for people who were allowed into the country once before and now want to return, or people who are here on visas now and want to travel and then come back. And what they say in the filing, as you see on the screen, at most the injunction should be limited to what the states say was their basic problem. And the states have said that the problem with the executive order for the states, it's hurting their economy, it's hurting their educational system, their universities, because scholars and students are stranded, the companies can't hire the best employees, and that's been the effect on the states. And then, of course, whoever loses before the appeals court will undoubtedly rush to the Supreme Court, Stephanie.
All right, I want you guys to weigh in on this. Steve, how important is it for the White House to win this appeal? This is their first major executive order.
Look, I think this is high stakes. It's certainly going to the Supreme Court, regardless of the outcome here in the appeals court. But what I think is true about this executive order, I think, is it stands to scrutiny in the federal courts. This was a political stunt. This has very little to do with security. None of the countries that produced from their populations the 9/11 hijackers, none of those countries are mentioned in the executive order. This was rushed through. It was crammed through. It wasn't vetted. It caused complete chaos, not just in this country, all over the world. And so it's unraveled in spectacular fashion because it was essentially the policymaking version of Lucy and the Chocolate Factory, just a complete and total mess. And I think that as the courts look at this, the White House is in a tough position.
Well, the White House, within the White House, it's caused chaos. And I want to speak to that. We've heard so much about the infighting. If President Trump, if the White House doesn't get their appeal through, what does it mean for Stephen Bannon? We already know there's so much talk of, President Bannon, he's running the show. And when you look inside the White House, you now clearly have two factions. From those I spoke to, they said, you've got Gary Cohn, Steve Mnuchin, Jared Kushner, three guys that are social Democrats, basically. And then you look, you've got a Rex Tillerson, a General Mattis, true process guys who've had thousands of men and women report to them over the years in their careers who are saying, this isn't the circus I want to be part of.
Right. Look, this is Steve Bannon. This is what Donald Trump's core constituency wanted, okay? He said, I'm going to build a wall. He started building the wall. He said, I'm going to keep out Muslims. I'm going to keep out Muslims, but I'm going to claim it to other countries. He's doing exactly what the people who voted for him wanted him to do. The problem is it doesn't work very well. And he's realizing that because when you actually run the government, it's not being a king. You can't just put through whatever policy you want. And eventually you're going to have to explain what you're doing and if it makes any sense. And the negative economic and national security impact of these visas being affected is going to be a problem. The issue is, I don't think they're going to learn any lesson from this. This is going to fail, and they're just going to try the next thing. I suspect by the end of this year, they'll start building that ridiculous wall, because I think the Trump administration is more interested in saying that we did something than making sure that what they did actually works.
Steve, you don't think this could cost Steve Bannon his job, or at least a demotion? Could it not say, listen, he's a brilliant political strategist, but in terms of policy and governing, clearly he doesn't have the goods. If you're Rex Tillerson and you say, hold on, on. I was signing on for a job where I would be in a position of influence and at a table for open debate. If there is no open debate, if it's a backroom conversation between those two guys, why would I risk my reputation for this?
Or Reince Priebus. Look, the job of the White House Chief of Staff is to control the flow of paper, to control the process of decision-making for the President of the United States. It's not to stand behind the Resolute desk and to clap when the President signs these meaningless executive orders. And so we've had 2 weeks of basically reality television from the Oval Office, the signing of these executive orders that have no force of law, that really have no real-world impact. The one that does is this one, and it's completely unraveled. It wasn't vetted through the Justice Department. It wasn't vetted through Homeland Security. It was completely sloppy. And so the president should be outraged. He should be very angry at the principal authors of this who have totally blown up his first couple of weeks in office.
And before we go, we have no time. Could this change the power structure in the White House?
I don't think it's going to change the power structure. I think the alt-right motivations of someone like Steve Bannon and Miller, who wrote this, I think they're going to keep trying. Their goal is to push through this agenda. They want to go after Muslims. They want to go after Mexicans. This is what they said the whole campaign. That's what they're going to do.
I don't know. Going up against Mattis, Tillerson, Gary Cohn, these are pretty tough guys. We'll find out. All right. Next.